y'all, it's Zoe and welcome back to another video on my channel. So this is one of my last videos for National Adoption Awareness Month for 2021. It's so hard to believe that November's almost over, literally. It feels like November 1st was like yesterday or last week. Like, this year and these months have just been blowing by for me. I don't know if they have for you, but anyways, to finish off National Adoption Awareness Month, like I mentioned in my last video, I'm going to be doing an adoption Q&A video because the last one I did was 2 years ago, so I thought it'd be fun to do one again. If you come up with any more questions that I didn't answer in this video or want me to expand on anything, please feel free to drop a comment down below. You can also message me on Instagram. So yeah, let's get on with the Q&A. Alright, so this first question actually comes from YouTube because in my last video I said if you had any questions that you wanted me to add, to drop them in the comments below. So this first question is, are you planning to study abroad? If so, China. Will you use that time to look for your family? So, funny thing about this question. First of all, I was planning to study abroad, but sadly that had to get canceled because of COVID and visas and all that. But I do really want to go back to China, and I was going to study abroad in China just because that's such a big part of who I am, and I'm also like part of my academics has to do with China and Chinese. And while I was there, I was going to use that time to access my adoption records. The city I was going to study abroad in is Beijing, and Beijing houses like the Center for Adoption Affairs, I believe. So I was going to try to use that time to see if I could access my adoption records because I am 18, just because I am really curious to know, and I do eventually want to go back to my home city. I don't really know, but either way, I do want to go back to China, whether it's to study, to live, to be a tourist, and I just really want to go back there because I love being there. I think it'd be really cool to live there for a few years at some point in my life. I don't really know when, but yes. And then this next question came off my adoption Instagram. It's not really like a question, it was more of a comment I saw that I wanted to address in this video. This comment says, I'd be grateful if you can explain how you deem this sentence so offensive. I think adoptees owe a debt of gratitude to life or to God. They have been given a second chance to be loved. So to me, I don't find it like extremely offensive. I think it just can be a little insensitive sometimes because of this idea that we owe a debt of gratitude. I talked about this in this video 2 years ago, but when I was in the 7th grade, a boy came up to me and told me that I should be lucky I wasn't aborted. And I was 12, so I didn't really know how to handle that situation. But, you know, thinking back on it now, like, probably what I would have said was, you should be lucky you weren't aborted too, because it's not just adoption versus abortion. Like, anyone could have been aborted if you think about it. So honestly, doesn't everyone owe a debt of gratitude that their parents didn't abort them? I think with adoptees it's different because people have it in their minds that we weren't wanted by our birth parents, so we could have been aborted or we could have been killed, but instead we were given life and we were given up for adoption, which, I mean, isn't always the case with adoption. Like, sometimes birth parents do want to keep their children, they just can't raise them, or they're not in the right not in the right like headspace or mindset to raise children. So I think it just comes off as insensitive because everyone always tells us we should be grateful for everything, and of course I am grateful for the life that I have now, as I've mentioned multiple times in videos, but I don't want to be told to be grateful, if that makes sense, because you wouldn't tell someone who's not adopted they should be grateful for their life or grateful to God for giving them life. Like, everyone should feel grateful, so why is it that you're only targeting adoptees when you say that sentence? So I think that's where it can come off as insensitive, is just, yes, we should be grateful, but like, we don't need people to tell us that we should be grateful. So the rest of these questions all come from Instagram. What was it like growing up without a dad? So this question, I mean, it definitely had difficult moments. For example, butterfly balls, which are the father-daughter dances. Those were always hard for me, or any conversations about fathers, like Father's Day, things like that. So it was definitely hard, but also I feel like in a way I lucked out because I was able to be raised by this amazing, strong, independent woman who raised 2 children all by herself, and I learned so much about what it means to be a strong and independent person, and I feel like that having a father figure has really shaped who I am today and my independence and my strength and freedom as a woman. So I think it definitely has its pros and cons. Yes. Do you feel like you have a hole that will never be filled? Yes, I do. I think a lot of adoptees do. There's always going to be this sense of I don't know, and there's always going to be that like missing part of not being able to grow up in my home culture, my home country with my birth parents. But I think there's never really going to be a way to fill that hole, even if I do ever meet someone who's like biologically related to me, like a birth family member, because they still missed out on like 21 years of my life, you know. So I think there's always going to be that hole of something missing, something about me that's missing. Even if I find out all the answers to my questions and I find my birth parents, like there's still going to be that thing that's missing. Where were you adopted from and at what age? So I was adopted from Guangxi province, which is this very southern part of China, and I was adopted at 11 months old. Do you have any adopted siblings? I do. I have a younger sister who was also adopted. We were adopted from the same province, but from different orphanages. What is National Adoption Awareness Month? Great question. Basically, it's just a month where people can learn about adoptees' experiences, learn about the adoption system in general. We have National Adoption Day, which was last Saturday, which just basically talks about raising awareness for the foster care system and trying to get children out of the foster care system so that they can find their forever homes. So it's just a month to raise awareness about all the issues with adoption, trying to let people know how many children are out there who need to be adopted, and then it's just a time for you to like learn and grow, educate yourself, educate others if you're adopted, of just unique experiences of adoptees, because even though we all have the one thing in common, we're all so different in so many ways. We've gone through so many different experiences and have so many different stories, so it's basically a time to just listen and learn if you're not an adoptee. What's something you wish people knew about being adopted? So I think definitely something I wish people knew about being adopted is that it's not all rainbows and unicorns. While there are a lot of happy things, there's also a lot of sad things too. And I don't want to always talk about the sad things, but like that is a big part, you know, trauma, guilt, identity crisis, like those are all part of being adopted. So adoption is just a complex thing. It has a bunch of complex emotions, and sometimes we don't always know how to express what we're feeling, and we don't realize that a lot of what we're feeling or a lot of behavior stems from being adopted, but it does. For example, my control issues stem from being adopted, my abandonment issues stem from being adopted. So even though we're not always aware of what's going on or how we're behaving, I think it's just important to know to like give us time to process and do what we need to do to process and try to help and support us. And the only way to do that is to ask. So don't be afraid to ask questions, and if they don't want to talk about it, then they don't want to talk about it, and that's it. So I think just recognizing that it's a bunch of complex emotions and thoughts, and to just ask. Thoughts on the 3-child policy? Well, I'm just going to direct you to this video, which is my thoughts on the 3-child policy. So I think what this question is supposed to say is ethnicity. So my adoptive mom is Caucasian/white. She was born and raised in Texas. How does the adoption process impact older kids? So it's definitely different when you are older and you are adopted, I think, because a lot of times you remember more. And actually a lot of research shows that the older you are adopted, the more psychological problems you might have in terms of attachment, anxiety, abandonment, trust, things like that. So that's definitely something that I would like look more into research-wise. I'm a psych major, so of course like I am always very interested in things like that. Like I was looking at attachment theory the other day, but I do know that it's a lot harder when you're adopted at an older age, especially if it's a more international adoption, and the idea of like, you know, learning a new language into the country that you've been adopted into, I know that can also be difficult. The hardest part about being adopted is definitely just all the unknowns and all the microaggressions that I get. So like wanting to be grateful. I haven't been asked this question yet, but I do know a lot of people who have. Just asking if I cost anything and like how expensive I was. And I think just like repetitive questions and like stereotypes about what adoption is, trying to always stay positive about adoption, even though, like, yes, it's a beautiful experience. A child gets a loving family and a loving home. It's not always like that. Sometimes people are adopted into really bad homes. And like I said before, there's so many complex feelings and emotions that come with being adopted that it's hard to always be happy or be grateful for being adopted. A favorite and least favorite thing about being adopted. So my favorite thing is definitely being able to talk about it. I think it's such a big part of who I am that I just love talking about it. I love like working through my issues with my other adoptee friends, even though it's something I struggle with. It's always good to have that support system. The adoptee community is such an amazing community. Like, it's just so amazing how many wonderful, amazing people there are out there. And I just love like making videos like this, posting on my Instagram account. Like, I just really like being an advocate for the adoptee community, and just being able to educate people in my experiences has been something that's really, really fun. And then my least favorite thing is probably what I've talked about a lot on this channel, which is just working through my trauma and my abandonment issues, and any like trust issues or identity issues. That's always a struggle for me, but I'm working through it, and I think it's definitely gotten a lot better in the past few years, so hopefully it'll continue to go upwards. Okay, and then I think this is the last question, which is, do you want to meet your birth family? So I have made several like birth parent search videos on this channel recently because I did start the search for my birth family. But as to if I do want to meet them, I'm still not sure. I think it's definitely something I would have to like talk about and work through like in the moment, like once I find out about it. I when I was little, I like hands down wanted to meet them 100%, but now I'm not really so sure anymore, just because like I don't really know. I don't know what could happen. I think it would be really cool if I could, but also like I don't really know. It's possible they could just not answer my questions, or I'm not sure. But it's definitely something that I've been thinking about, and I would probably be open to wanting to meet them if they would be open to wanting to meeting me. I think that would be a really cool experience, but I would also be fine with never meeting them, because then that wouldn't change anything in my life. But I think if I did meet them, it could be a really positive experience, but I also have a lot of worries that it could turn into a negative experience as well. So I think the answer to this question is just to play it by ear and see what happens. Well, thank you so much for listening to this Q&A. I know it turned out to be a lot longer than anticipated. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any more questions for me, please feel free to comment them down below or message me on Instagram. Everything is in the description box. And I will see you all next week, and happy end of National Adoption Awareness Month. I hope you loved all the videos I did this year. If you have any video ideas for next year, I'd love to hear them. So I will see you all next week. Oh, and since Thanksgiving is on the day after I post this, I hope you all have an amazing Thanksgiving. So yeah, now I will see you all next week. Bye.